Life is made up of experiences. Experiences shape our perspectives and allow us to pass along knowledge. In this podcast, I sit down with listeners like you and find out that no matter who you are, everyone has a story to tell. I'm Ethan Smith, and this is Life Experienced.
I grew up as a little kid, running around the house with a trash can and a shower cap on my head yelling trash man. I just thought that was the coolest thing. You got to hang on the back of a truck.
Yeah.
Dreams do come true.
That was Jeremy Hart. Jeremy is currently a realtor here in Blacksburg, Virginia, so if you're wondering how his childhood dream of becoming a garbage man factors into his job as a realtor, well, so was I. It turns out Jeremy has an interesting career path, which began when he went to college. So what is your background in college then? What's your...
Path of least resistance.
Sure.
So I got an exercise science degree,
Okay.
Which really just meant it gave me a lot of time to play volleyball. And it meant that I didn't have to take a lot of math classes. So, but I knew I wasn't going to do it outside of college. It was just kind of a path to get through. I didn't really have a career course in mind, didn't know what I was going to do, but as I looked around, most of the people that I knew weren't doing what they had studied in college. And so it just kind of seemed like, I'll just do what's interesting now and see what happens in the future. And as I look back now over the last, 20 years, I can see how all of the pieces fit together to how I've gotten to where I am now.
Yeah.
You don't know that in the moment,
Right?
But it is fun to look back now and say, well, how did baseball work into that? Or how did the recycling company or real estate, how did all of those things tie together? So after graduating from school, I worked for a minor league baseball team down in North Carolina.
Which one?
The the Piedmont Boll Weevils.
Wow. They do have some crazy names.
They are now the Kannapolis Intimidators.
Okay.
Yeah, so just north of Charlotte.
Well, I grew up going to Greensboro Grasshoppers and Winston-Salem Warthogs,
The
which is now
Warthogs,
the Dash.
Yeah. So I worked for them for a while down in North Carolina, and then when I got out of baseball, ended up here. So I've kind of bounced around the Mid-Atlantic region for the last 20 years, I guess.
So what specifically were you doing for the baseball teams?
Group sales and promotions. But, in minor league baseball, everybody does everything. So
Sure.
I learned that real quick. I think the first week we had a rain delay and everybody hops over and we're pushing the tarp, and I look over and there's the GM of the team right next to me pushing tarp with a big old smile on his face. Like everybody does everything. So it was a lot of fun. I say a lot, it was the best job I ever had. It wasn't the best career. It's
Sure.
the best job.
Okay,
a lot
so
of fun
just-
out
yeah.
of college.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Jeremy's circumstances would eventually bring him to Blacksburg, where he began looking for jobs anywhere and everywhere.
If there was advice I could give myself 20 years ago, it would just say yes. Because in saying yes, that's where the opportunities come from.
So what kind of things did you say yes to once you moved to this area?
So initially I worked... the very first job I had was I shagged golf balls at the driving range. Just walked up there one day, told the guy I needed a job. Carlos was his name. Told him I needed a job. I shagged balls and trimmed the bushes and just kind of was a lackey for a while, which I'm sure made my mom real excited. Then for a couple of years, I managed the pool hall in Squires.
Okay.
So
I've been down there a few times.
I played pool for a living in Bold. So I managed that for a couple of years, and I did like, I came from a sports background of sorts, and then I was doing group sales and promotions, and I liked the next step, which was really just kind of almost running a business. I didn't create the budget. The budget was given to me, but over the course of the year, I had the opportunity to kind of run a business of sorts, and have and manage employees and all of the trials that may come with that, and also the successes that come with that. And so I did that for a couple of years, and I realized if I was going to work at Virginia Tech, I needed an advanced degree because That's the only way to really do things within the state system, it seemed. And so I started taking a master's. I started getting an MBA, and I started taking a course called Entrepreneurial Leadership. And I got a few weeks into it, and I realized I still hated school. Just wasn't my thing. So I actually told the professor first. Then I told my boss. So I walked up to the professor, and I said, I think this class worked. I'm going to quit my job and go do something else. And then I walked across campus and told my boss, and then probably went home and told my wife, which was probably the wrong order, but, lesson learned. And that's how I got into real estate.
Jeremy obtained his real estate license in 2004 and promptly went to work learning the business.
So how does one just start into real estate when you drop out of your MBA, you quit working at the pool hall? What do you do?
Ignorance is bliss. I just went to work.
Yeah.
I mean, truthfully, I was telling this story to somebody recently. I didn't know what I was doing. You could still argue that that's the case, but I just went to work. I just showed up. Like, I didn't have anything to do, but I knew that if I was going to be successful at it, I needed to learn it, and I wasn't going to learn it watching ESPN on the couch at home. So I just got dressed and I went to work, and I just sat there and listened. I listened to the conversations, and there were agents that sort of took me under their wing and said, let's go to a closing, or they let me shadow them when they worked with a buyer or with a seller. And so it's like language immersion. I mean, that's really what it came down to for me. I just needed to be immersed in the language and learn it. And once I felt comfortable, at least faking it, I was off to the races.
Yeah.
So that's how one gets started. Ignorance.
Right. So you started then as just an agent working for another.
Yeah. So I was, I worked at another firm in town for 7 years, and it was great because I was a small fish in a big pond, and was just had the safety net of a lot of experience around me. So I did that for 7 years, and then had been watching this little company in Charlottesville, Virginia, that was just getting off the ground with 2-3 agents, and I knew a couple of them and was just interested in what they were doing. And the more I looked at it, the more I realized that can work here. And so each individual agent is their own business.
Sure.
Right. And so it's probably not as much as that Mr. and Mrs. Smith want to list their house with Nest Realty. It's that they trust and believe in Ethan.
Sure.
And so they're trusting that you're giving them the advice that they need for their circumstances.
So it really comes down to connections,
relationships,
with the people, relationships that you've made.
Yeah. And then from there, it snowballs, and it can either snowball in one direction or it can snowball in the other direction. And in a community like ours, where it's so small and it's so tight knit, and in many ways we're all far more interconnected than we may be in a larger metro area. That can really get out of hand for good or for bad very quickly. So that those relationships and how you curate them matters.
Sure. 3 years after beginning work as a realtor, Jeremy was presented with an interesting opportunity, one that would make his childhood dreams come true. We'll hear that story right after this. Over the past few months, my wife and I have been able to save some time and money and develop a whole new set of cooking skills. How did we do it? We started subscribing to EveryPlate. EveryPlate is a meal kit delivery service that's different from others you may have heard of because it only costs $5 per serving, which is about half as much as those other meal kits cost. Each meal features a recipe that's made from fresh ingredients and only takes about 30 minutes to make. The box of ingredients and recipe cards are delivered to your door each week, so all that's left for you to do is enjoy making the meals. If you'd also like to sharpen your cooking skills and enjoy recipes you want to make over and over, you can get $20 off your first box from EveryPlate by visiting lifeexperienced.org/EveryPlate. That's lifeexperienced.org/everyplate for $20 off your first delivery. Welcome back. In 2007, an unexpected opportunity arose for Jeremy, which helped him fulfill a childhood dream. But of course, it was with a small twist.
Where does the recycling thing come into all this?
Interestingly, the recycling company comes from real estate. So I forget the years now, but maybe 2007 or so, I got a message on Twitter from somebody who had asked if I had ever gotten a real estate client through Twitter. And I had, and he said, "Do you want another?" He and his wife were moving here. He was going to go to VCOM, and we just became friends. And through that process, he asked one day, he said, "Why is there no recycling in Christiansburg?" No idea. I never lived in Christiansburg, never really thought about it. But he said, I've seen this done, and I think you could start a recycling business here. And so he and I did. So we bought a van from Blacksburg Baptist Church and ripped the seats out and went and bought some trash cans from Lowe's and started advertising. We had a business, and we ran that for maybe six years or so and sold it. And they're still operating under a different name, but they're still operating.
So what kinds of things were these? Just post-consumer goods that you were collecting, or
household recycling?
Okay.
So, at the time, Blacksburg had a recycling program through Waste Management through the town, but Christiansburg didn't have the same. And so we literally just, I think some newspaper articles and maybe some flyers, and we started picking up customers, and then we expanded to Radford, which was actually a mistake because a newspaper article referenced, I think I said that we were thinking of going to local or adjacent municipalities, and actually a realtor walked into my office with a check for recycling in Radford, and so I was like, I guess we have a business in Radford now. So that's the way it worked, and it was great. And it was, he was studying to become a doctor. He has since become a doctor. It was a really good partnership because he had skills that I didn't have. He built the database that allowed us to run the whole business, truthfully. And I was really responsible for day-to-day. And once we got the right employees in place, my day-to-day responsibilities were pretty minimal. And so it still allowed me to focus on what was providing income, which was real estate. So it worked out really well. And even before we sold it, he was, I don't know, in Indianapolis or Kentucky, or he had moved. We were still running the business, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So I imagine that a lot of people just put the recyclables in the bin, put it next to the road, and then it just disappears.
It just goes somewhere.
Right. So if you could talk about that, I think that's something that would interest a lot of people. Is what did you actually do with the things once you picked them up?
We took them to the Solid Waste Authority, which is over in Christiansburg, and they have a whole facility that's just for the recycling stuff. And so, we'd pull in, and there are these excavators with these big dump trucks and all this stuff, and here we are with our little blue church van and backing in and just hauling out these trash cans. And so we would dump the plastics over there and the paper over there, and I don't know. It's really a pretty simple concept. We bought a box truck eventually and built these corrals in that thing, and worked great.
So did you ever get a lot of things that, or I guess they probably took care of most of the sorting then?
We sorted it at the truck.
Okay.
So we had a system that, plastics are going to go here in the truck, paper's going to go there,
okay,
et cetera. But then we had to, we sorted it again when we dumped it at the transfer station. But and then they would sort it further from there. But yeah, it was fun.
It seems interesting that a town that has that facility did not have any way of actually picking up its
imagine
citizens. That. I know they do now, but
they do now. But when I first talked to Henry Showalter is a council member in Christiansburg. Henry Showalter and I talked about what we were going to do when recycling got taken over by the town. And that was before we had even started the company. We were just sort of exploring it. So we knew it was on the table, but it took forever. The wheels of progress always move slowly in those kinds of environments. So it gave us an opportunity to serve a need in the short term. And I hope we did. I think we did.
Yeah.
It was fun.
I would say so. I think that's a good thing.
Lots of interesting stuff.
Right.
In 2008, while running the recycling company, Jeremy started his own realty business, Nest Realty, where he works now and has been principal broker since 2015. Jeremy and his partner would sell the recycling business in 2014, but getting to do your childhood dream job for any amount of time, much less 6 years, must be satisfying. Given his career path thus far, I asked Jeremy if he had any other plans for the future.
So is this something that you think you'll be doing for a while, or any other big plans?
Until I get to say yes to the next opportunity.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I love it. I said baseball was the best job I ever had. Real estate is the best career. I have had opportunities that I never would have thought possible. I never thought I would own my own real estate company. That became a possibility. I never thought I would work with some of the people that I work with, and that became a possibility. I met my wife through real estate. Some of my best friends, I met through real estate. So maybe one day, but
yeah,
it's certainly not on my radar. This is an interesting. I took over this year as the president of the New River Valley Association of Realtors, and I remember saying at my installation, we're afforded opportunities here to be a part of people's lives at a really, intimate, special point. Whether it's a downsizing or they're getting ready for a kid or whatever, and they let you in on that process for a brief period of time, and that's a pretty special opportunity we're afforded. So I think that's probably what's probably the most neat. I think to me is getting to participate in people's lives that you just wouldn't have had that opportunity as a trash man.
Sure. Jeremy has embraced the mantra of just say yes when opportunities arise. I asked him if he had any advice for others facing decisions that could have a huge impact on their lives.
I often, when I talk to someone like you who is really passionate about saying yes to opportunities, if there's just some general piece of advice you'd give to people who might find themselves in that situation, not knowing what they want to do, just based on your experience.
Well, I wish I had, I wish I had, I wish I could regale you with stories that, that would fill up the time. I think I probably look at this in such a way as to say, we don't know what tomorrow holds. And, I think it's human nature to, when presented with an opportunity or when presented with a need and how do we fill this, it's easy to say, I don't know, that's a big deal. We'll let somebody else figure it out, or that's going to cost too much money, or I'm scared to fail, whatever. The first thing is often, what's our excuse? Or what's my reason? And I say, just say yes. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? And oftentimes the worst that can happen is far better than what we imagined in our mind. And then on the flip side, what's the best that can happen? Who knows? But I mean, I think the opportunities are endless. So I say yes.
That's great.
Nest Realty will no doubt continue to serve the New River Valley of Virginia with Jeremy Hart at the helm. And while he won't be driving door to door collecting bottles and cardboard, Jeremy will certainly make an impact in the lives of the people around him. Life Experienced is hosted and produced by Ethan D. Smith and is primarily distributed via Anchor.fm. The show is also available via D-Sound, a decentralized audio sharing platform built on the Steam blockchain. For more information, visit dsound.audio. The music in this podcast is composed by Lee Rosevere and is used under a Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 license. For more information, visit freemusicarchive.org. If you'd like more information about Jeremy's work at Nest Realty, just visit nestrealty.com, that's N-E-S-T realty.com, and select the New River Valley location. If you like the show, be sure to share it with others. Links to learn more about this episode, as well as more information on the podcast itself, may be found by visiting lifeexperienced.org. And for those of you still listening, it's not always easy driving a box truck around picking up people's recyclables, as one of Jeremy's new employees once discovered.
You know, I'll pick on this. I'll pick on this guy. He's a friend of mine. We hired him for a while. He was he's a pastor, and he was between churches, and so we hired him just kind of as just to give him something to do. And so he was our driver. The first day he was driving, I'm in the truck with him because I'm helping him work out the routes and how we did that sort of thing. And we're going down Tom's Creek Road, and we're in this big box truck, so it sways side to side. And it was we hadn't picked anybody up yet. It was the very first stop, and he comes into a corner, and I said, "You need to slow down." I'll leave his name out. And I said, "You need to slow down." And sure enough, bam, the top of that box sways into a road sign. And to this day, the road sign is still bent from where that truck hit it. So we're going through our route, and then later the day, we go to a commercial customer in Christiansburg, and he's backing up, and I'm looking in the side mirror, and I see the branches from the trees getting kind of, they're getting knocked to the side by the box. And I said, careful, and he hit the gas, and a branch probably 6 inches in diameter just falls to the ground. So we got this picture of him standing there. He's, all of 5'4", and he's got this big branch standing above him, and he's holding the thing. And the customer's out there with a chainsaw the next day having to clean the tree up because we had done all this damage to it. But I don't know that they're funny, but it's just, those are the kinds of things that as we went through the day, it's the type of service that you don't really think about. Like as a consumer, you just put, like you said, you put it to the curb and you kind of forget about it. But that's the beauty of a community, is that there are all these other things that are happening throughout the day, the work week, throughout our lives that just are happening in the background. They get it done. They contribute to overall quality of life. And I'd like to think that Valley Curbside contributed to some of that.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And once again, I'm Ethan Smith, reminding you to get out there and experience life.